Houses of worship safe. The feds telling Detroit area churches to ramp up security. It was also the focus of a summit at Wayne State University today.
This comes on the heels, of course, of that deadly shooting at a historic black church in Charleston, South Carolina. Former FBI agent in charge, Dan Roberts, joins us now. Dan, it's so good to have you with us.
Good to be with you.
Why Detroit in particular here? Is it happening all over the country? Or
no, it's an initiative that's being coordinated by the United States Department of Justice out of Washington, D.C., and they're all discussing with their various church leaders across the country these threats that have come up in the country.
What can we do?
You know, it's a lot like the threats that we face at schools these days. Unfortunately, churches just need to prepare. They need to have a plan, and they need to test their plan. And most churches don't even think about it, frankly. Unfortunately, because all of the school shootings that we've had in the recent past, schools have gotten really good at coming up with a plan. They rehearse it with their students, with all of their leaders in the schools. The churches need to do the same thing, and that's what the message was today: was be prepared.
Obviously, the shooting in Charleston was said to be motivated by racial hatred. Does that mean that black churches in Detroit are more at risk, or is it really any church?
It can be any church. We've seen these things over the years happen at all kinds of different faiths, unfortunately. Some of it really goes back to gang wars in Chicago and Los Angeles, where there was funerals going on and retaliation, then shootings that happened during funerals in gang activity. But the most recent things have been civil rights violations, and certainly all churches need to prepare, all faiths.
When we say prepare, did we get into specifics at the summit today about what they can do beyond having a plan? I mean, everyone's fear, I think, as you're sitting there, and if there was a gunman who came in that we hear in movie theaters and schools and elsewhere and start shooting. So what does a plan entail, really?
Sure, certainly. Well, what the FBI tries to get out, they've been talking about a program that they've had for years called Run, Hide, and Fight. If you can't run and get out of the way from the situation, then hide in place if you can, and if you can't do either of those, then fight with the assailant. And so they teach that, and they have been teaching that for 3 or 4 years now. But there's also plans in place, and the FBI and local law enforcement can work with these churches of all kinds to come up with a security plan, perhaps even as simple as locking certain doors at certain times, being aware of their surroundings, reporting suspicious individuals that they see coming into the church and checking it out.
What about things like being aware of exits? I mean, it's sad to say, but you know, when you go into a public place now, I feel like you kind of need to be aware of how do you get out if, God forbid, something happens.
Right. The public needs to be vigilant, just like if you were going and staying in a hotel or if you were attending a movie in a movie theater. You need to know where the exits are in case there's any kind of emergency. And the same, unfortunately, now is true for churches and in other places of worship.
I remember in the Charleston shooting, there was the video camera that gave us a great look of that suspect. I mean, that was critical in finding him. Is it talked about with houses of worship that some sort of surveillance is maybe something in the future that should be?
Yeah, absolutely. In common areas in the churches, they will be pursuing that, hallways and open areas, certainly not in the private sections of the church, but certainly at the entrances and exits of the churches, they should be looking at adding some security cameras. If they don't have them already, many do already.
Because they're welcoming places, right? That's what church, I mean, the churches open the doors and just welcome everybody.
Right, that's exactly right. And unfortunately, we're in an era now where we just have to plan for some kind of aggressive behavior, like an active shooter.
What's your best advice for a minister or pastor?
Just to talk about it with the leadership of the church. They should be sitting down at a table at least and figuring out if this does happen, what should we do about it? If it happens during the middle of services, how would we handle that? Where would we direct the people to go? And also talk about the types of people that may come in that are worthy of calling the police department or the FBI about. That they obviously stick out like a sore thumb, and they really are espousing views that they're contrary to their church or other things. And certainly they know who those people are that don't fit in their particular churches or places of worship, and they should be calling the police or the FBI.
Prepare for the worst, but always pray and hope for the best, right?
Exactly right.
All right, Dan, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right.